put it in this thing.
It looks nice. Yeah, please do so. Drop it on in
I'll
there.
throw it. I'll throw it in the fireplace. There you go.
All right. Ooh, that's cool. Who's that?
What?
He looks gnarly.
Not along.
I would not play with him.
Um, it's not play well. Let's leave it at
I could
that.
I could guess that much, huh?
Yeah. Well, yeah. It makes sense.
Let's see. See if old Feedle's down to jump in.
I see we had quite a few questions.
Yeah, we do. We got several topics to go over, that's for sure.
It's really good. And it's actually a lot of questions that come up quite a bit.
No, absolutely. I think they're pretty solid ones. I want to get just one or two more people in here. But if it's just me and you, that's a good time. So,
That's a well, of course it is.
that's the best times.
Exactly.
What is this fancy ass computer thing you have here with like it looks Are you Tony
Oh
Stark?
no, no, no. I'm better than Tony Stark. No, no, no. That's the case upgrade, and Robo wanted to see it.
Dude, it is sick. That's so ridiculous.
Yeah, and he's like, "Did you put more hardware in?" I'm like, "No, it's still the same hardware. It's just in a different case."
Yeah, he gets really jazzed about talking about computers, that's for sure. What's up? Hello there. Welcome. We're just hanging out chatting a little bit while we wait on some folks and get started. Thanks for popping in.
Absolutely.
I should
Feel free
grab.
to ask any questions.
Yeah, please do. We've got a plethora of questions tonight, but we always like to get to our viewers' questions every session. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's. I mean, a lot of the ones coming from chat actually were pretty good questions
I'm a big
last time.
fan. I think one that I don't know how I'm gonna answer is where is it? Talking about the importance of prosody and possibly going over a few meters in their historical use and how they can be used to enhance immersion during narration. We're gonna need Tal to come in for that one. I don't know if I'm smart enough to do all that.
Yeah, it's fine. That's
Well, when
fair
you
enough.
got to look up the definition of prosody, okay, the pattern of rhythm and sound used in poetry. I'm not a
Oh,
smart man.
oh no, not the poetry again. No.
Right? He was doing some spoken word for us last night. That was
E- exactly, exactly.
that was special. Um yeah, we'll glaze over that one till later. And the Rick and Morty setup, I gotta get have you run a Rick and Morty campaign yet, Artificer?
I did.
What'd you think?
It,
How was it?
I mean, it's Rick and Morty. I mean,
Pretty
if you
fun.
go in expecting a serious game, don't run it. I mean,
Well, yeah. That's fair. My buddy Jammy, he's offered to run it several times for me and the wife, and I really need to take him up on that.
you do. You really do. I mean, honestly, you do.
I think it would be lots of fun. Oh, I don't know if you're looking at the stream, but I told you I got a little purple dragon friend.
I seen it. I seen it. I seen it.
He can dance.
Can dance.
Yeah, go.
Nice.
You just type in dance and he dances. Anyone can do it. And then nom nom, and he cooks a steak and eats it. It's fantastic. What's up, Foresight? Welcome, man.
Hello, hello, hello.
Happy to have you, brother.
Yeah.
We
Are
were
you guys
just
currently doing the stream or are you just
we
setting up?
are we're live right now, and we're just kind of shooting the shit a little bit. Waiting for you to get here. I hit up a couple others, seeing if they're interested. I wasn't 100% sure if I was gonna stream tonight because we were gonna be running late at the gym, but turned out great, and we got out of there at a good time, and yeah, everything's good to go.
Nice, nice.
Yeah. How's your evening going, my friend?
It's going good. I'm mostly playing video games. Just chilling, trying to just decompress a little bit.
Most excellent.
Yeah.
Oh no, go away, Jan.
What?
Ugh.
Oh, go
Trans-
away, yawn. Got
Yeah,
it.
had to smack
Sev,
myself up.
translate that. What was that? Translate that. I couldn't.
That was go away, yawn, and then I smacked myself several times.
All right.
I respond well to
is,
pain.
is that was that like some part of like a Choltian rain dance or something like that? You know, this is.
For the oh, you have a flower in your ear. I love it.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Is that a
Picked it up on
is
my
that a lily?
travels.
Is that a lily?
I don't know.
Let me see. Come
orchid.
closer.
It's
Closer.
white and it's a flower and it's got some red.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Not sure.
It looks like it.
I have been
Maybe.
told it makes me kawaii as fuck. So.
It does make you kawaii as fuck. 100%.
Ooh, we're not allowed to say that word. Okay, I wasn't
Oh,
sure.
bro, I
Even then you
cuss.
said it.
I cuss on the stream all kinds.
Oh, okay.
Ah, shit. There goes the demonetization. Son of a.
Hey,
All right.
if scantily clad ladies in underwear can hump pool inflatables in a hot tub, I can say fuck.
Oh my god.
All
Are we
right.
gonna go over that?
I don't.
Are we
I
gonna
don't
go
know
over
if that's
that
a
too?
reasonable argument to make because I feel like it's a different like audience that's going for that. You know.
That's
Just saying.
fair.
mean-
We were thinking about doing a D&D hot tub stream where I get some D4 pasties and I jump in a hot tub to DM a session.
I mean.
I mean, if it sells content, I'm.
It's kind of like, where's your integrity? Are you here to make money or
Whoa,
put out,
whoa,
or put
whoa!
out
Now
good
hold
content?
on. Hold on. You say integrity, but it doesn't make you not have integrity, technically.
I mean, it depends on what I'm trying to do, right? Like, if I'm trying to run good D&D content with like quality information or good sessions, then I don't really
Are
need.
you saying you can't have that and pasties? Is that the argument you're trying to tell me right now?
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Okay.
The argument is I don't necessarily need those, the latter, to
Right.
complete the former, right?
So you're saying it would water down your content?
It might be distracting.
Yeah, but so is life. like also what might be distracting is the fact that my dishwasher's door is down, like, or that I have a flower.
I take offense to the fact that you think your dishwasher's door is more distracting than me being half naked.
I'm not into dudes. It's not a hard concept to understand.
That's fair. That's fair. Ford ad break. Jeez, you getting Ford dough? Yeah, Mexicron. I wish I was getting some of that money. I think I get like a penny for every ad that plays. So I guess a little.
Also, just on the dish thing, the dishes have gotten more rub downs from me than you ever will.
It's a real shame.
See?
Just gonna throw that out
See?
right now. It's a real shame.
The stream is dying as we speak. There it goes.
And
it hasn't even gotten
Pasties,
started
rub
yet.
downs. I mean, geez, what are we? What? 10 minutes? 8 minutes in? Yeah.
We got
stream, pasties, rub downs. Yep, it's degraded already.
and
some-
dishes and lilies. Don't forget my part of the contribution there.
got some lowbrow content here for you guys. Sorry about that.
Lowbrow and highbrow is all cultural like understanding. It's
Subjective.
not. Yeah, it's all subjective at best.
There you go. Well, hey, I think we've gone over the basics here. I'm gonna go grab a drink of water and use the restroom really quick, and then we're gonna jump into questions. Sound good, guys?
Sounds good.
I'll
Sounds
leave you two with this. The question that we are going to go over first is, how do you deal with problem players, and what are some red flags for you? And I'll be right back.
Well, the
right.
first part of that question is obviously a Glock. That's how you solve that problem.
No. See, like, 20 to 30 in the slammer for murder. No. Taser.
No. I'm not murdering that. I'm just like shooting him in the foot.
Yeah, you can still go away for that.
Yeah, but not for life.
I mean,
It's just assault with a deadly weapon, not first-degree murder. It's a big difference.
Well, they could die by infection.
That's fair.
Also,
All right,
if
I'll
you
make
shoot
sure to
below the
treat.
belt, it's also not considered attempted murder. Gonna throw that out there.
Yeah, it's
See,
true too. But that still means you can shoot somebody in the junk, so that's just not fair.
that's why I was going for the foot because I wanted to cripple them for life. That's my plan.
Yeah, that's a long-term thing.
I'm not a good person. That's the moral of this story.
Well, if you're outing yourself like that, Foresight, I suppose.
Really shot myself in the foot there.
I was waiting for. Come on. I mean, I lobbed that one up there. I was waiting for you to hit it. I was like, come on.
Welcome to my stream, folks. Lowbrow humor and terrible puns. Yeah, as an avid 2A fan, I definitely don't recommend doing that. All right, guys. So let us jump into this. I am going to start with you, Mr. Foresight. How do you deal with problem players, and what are some red flags for you?
Well, some red flags for me are kind of the same red flags that I would say that I apply to just people in general. There's this idea that I mean I haven't created it obviously, but I've formulated for myself over like the last couple of years. And there's this idea of like consent when you're talking to people. Um, and there's this like idea that if you're sharing ideas, you kind of check in with the person every once in a while to see like if they're still attentive or how they're, any kind of just checking in or seeing how like in they are with the conversation. And if they never do it, I find a strong correlation between those people and people who have trouble understanding how consent works.
Mm,
Um, and I try to avoid those people as best I can in my campaigns.
that's fair.
Um, I was yeah. Aside from that, I don't really have a problem with a lot of players. Like I don't my problems really just come from people who don't understand proper interpersonal protocol in our, I guess, modern era.
Being
Although
being decent.
being decent, yeah. It's that's the type of problem players I have because it's the same type of people who are going to, for example, stab another player in character,
Oh God,
without no in character. I know I
a
worded back
player. Yeah,
in character, without like any forethought or checking in or anything like that. It's the same like kind of general people, and I think there are some exceptions to that. I think there are some people who treat it more like a video game than anything, and so they don't understand that connection people can have with their character. Um, but I think, and in those situations, I would like obviously talk to the player, see what's going on there. It just depends too. There's just there's so much gray area. It's hard to say.
that's fair.
Um,
That's fair. It is. It's and it's very subjective too at the same time, and I think that's why it's good to get multiple opinions. You know.
yeah.
Excellent. Artificer, are you all done there, my friend?
Yeah. What am
Wait,
I
no,
doing?
I mean Foresight. Are you all done
Oh,
there, my
I
friend?
was like, what am I doing?
Before I
um,
cut you off and move on.
Thank you for asking for consent.
Do
Always
it.
Not
asking.
see, but that like honestly, that's a perfect example. Like uh, people who do stuff like that, like check in, make sure, hey, was I cutting you off? That's good. Those are what I call green flags. You know what I mean? Like stuff that I think is positive. And if I don't see those, then I know there's gonna be a problem at some point. Um, yeah, I think I'm good.
Awesome. Thank you for the input, sir. Yeah,
Mhm.
Artificer. What are how do you handle problem players, and what are some red flags for you?
Um, well, usually, as far as for problem players, I try to, um, if it's immediately needed, talk to them at the table, and if a further discussion after the session is needed, a one-on-one. Because if you just try and not communicate with the problem player after the session, and you just kind of like if you put it out real fast, and you kind of like squash the issue at the table during the game,
Mhm.
that's where a lot of people stop. You need to have that kind of follow through with a problem player, because if you don't, they're just going to be like, okay, I got away with it that one time. Maybe I could do it again. So that after session discussion, like, hey, and I mean, the best way to know if you have a problem player is if your other players are saying something, or if the mood in the whole group dynamic changes as well. So
Yeah. Yeah.
getting to know your group and kind of reading them is also another major thing. So if like I said, the number one thing is everybody having fun at the table. That's what I want to know. And if everybody's not,
Then we got a
then
problem.
right. And you can know, and I mean, like, honestly, you'll know if you have a problem player. If a lot of players are like, I mean, when one player is talking and the rest of your table gives you the eye roll and like, oh my god, they're doing this again, kind of thing. Yeah,
Mhm.
you might have a problem player. So
This is true. True. Excellent.
so yeah, like little red flags, I guess, for things like that.
Well, yeah,
But
there's a lot of little nuances there for sure.
right. Um, but yeah, that's probably what I would say. You have to, and I know a lot of people even. I mean, um, some DMs I know are not very confronting people, and there's that step of trying to communicate after a session. It doesn't have to be face to face; it can be over text. But I mean, if you're to the point where it needs to be serious enough, face to face is for sure, because definitely body language and facial expression and somewhat even like a little emotion will be like, look, man, everybody at the table agrees that you're kind of dragging down the group. So
Yeah,
yeah,
this is not okay. Yeah, absolutely. That's something that I'd love to touch on is like your other players are going to be the first ones to let you know if there's a big issue, right?
right.
I mean, you can pick up on stuff, of course, but is it a big issue or is it just something that annoys you?
Exactly. That's exactly right. Is it annoyance for you?
Yeah, because I've personally had things that like, yeah, that kind of bugged me, but was everyone still having fun? Was it impeding on the good time being had? Was it diminishing from the overall experience, or was it just something that maybe kind of cajoled you a little bit, riled you up a little bit? And so, if you're on the fence, look at your other players. They'll tell you.
Right. And then that goes back to the one thing that we stated a couple of streams ago was have a maybe bi-weekly, monthly, or weekly. It depends on how much feedback you want. Have a online non identifying like questionnaire, like how am I doing? How's the game going?
Yeah.
Any issues you might have.
And how do you set up one of those? I actually need to set one of those up.
It's really easy. They have templates on Google Forms where you can either set up where you have to register your email, or it could just be totally anonymous, and anybody with the link can just go and fill out a question thing
And
saying, it's like a question, multiple choice, or you could do like a fill out like essay type deal.
and in this
It's very easy to set up.
scenario, you would recommend anonymity, correct?
Yeah, I would, because if you make them tag like their email or their name to it, they're going to have that buffer of not being total open and honest with the game. But if
Mm-hmm.
you have no idea who it is and you state that at the beginning, that's something.
Ooh, looks like Barry Boy is gonna come join us. Let me give him the streamer tag. Sorry to interrupt there.
No, it's okay. Yeah, but yeah, if you have like an anonymous like question thing, um, I know for a lot of my playtest stuff, it's very good to have that. And honestly, I mean the first couple of times that um, it happens, they really don't believe it's like anonymous. And then they're like, do I really fill it out? And then when you like at the next session, like if you keep it generalized, like it was kind of brought up, and then go over a few topics. And if you don't like tag a name to it, they're more open and honest with it next time. So
Yep, yep, yep.
That is fair. Hold on. Let me give this man the streamer tag. There you go. Be able to jump in now. If you look down in the bottom of the voice channels, there should be a live stream channel that you are. Hey, there he is.
Found it.
Welcome, my friend. You're in just in time for our first topic. Thank you so much for coming, buddy.
What's up?
Artificer, did you have anything else you wanted to put in on that, my friend?
no, man, I talked long enough. It's good enough.
I think that was some really crucial information, and I think that yes, anyone who is concerned, go jump on doing those online surveys. That's going to give your players the courage to really come forth and be raw and honest with you, because a lot of people have a hard time doing that. In fact, one of my favorite people right here, Mr. What are we calling you here?
You call me Berry Boy. That's fine. That works.
All right, our my friend Barry Boy here. He is one of the most open and honest people that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. This gentleman and I can have really, really raw conversations about how to improve, how things have gone wrong, with no hurt feelings and no, bad taste left in the mouth. And that's because, just as he will be completely earnest with you, he's also receptive to that. And that's going to lead into to my red flag. If someone's not receptive to criticism, that's a huge issue for me. If someone seems to resist anybody kind of giving them advice, or even if they kind of need to have an opinion on everything, where you just kind of clash, that's a big one for me that I'm not a huge fan of. And that's a really hard one to have a talk with someone about, because that's a very personal thing. I've found that pride tends to get in the way a lot, and especially when you're trying to grow as a person. And if someone's prideful, it's going to be hard to tell them, where they might need to grow, and where you might think, they are deserving of criticism. The other reason this is difficult is because a lot of times people feel attacked. You have to present your criticism in a carefully packaged manner, depending on the person. And one thing that I love is I've been really fortunate, and the players that I've surrounded myself with and I've had in my games are people who can challenge me openly, and I can challenge them openly, and we're able to move forward with no problem. I've run into a couple people where that's not the case. I choose not to play with them any longer, because that's not something I can fix at the table. That's something that person will have to recognize themselves through self-awareness, and they're going to have to grow on their own. And as much as I'd like to help people with that, who am I? I have a lot of growing to do on my own, but also that's not a decision I can make for them. That's got to come from within. Aside from that, really argumentative people who are going to argue with other party members or with the DM constantly. I can understand if you think things aren't fair and you want to put forth your opinion. There's a really easy way to do that without it coming off as, hey, you're wrong, fuck you. And so if someone struggles with that, that's a pretty big red flag for me. I should probably use the survey system, but I'm really just a direct and blunt kind of guy who comes face first, like, hey, what's up? Is there something I'm doing wrong? Let's talk about it. Here's what I think you might be doing wrong, and let's see where we can meet in the middle and maybe grow together. That can make people uncomfortable sometimes. I've had some situations where, it didn't pan out the best. Maybe I didn't deliver it as well as I could have, and I've definitely worked on myself to do better in that regard. But I really recommend sitting down and being transparent and being receptive to criticism if you're going to give it out. And I know I kind of went, it's like a small tangent, but it's all related. We're circling back here because I think that's a really big red flag, and it's really important to clear that air before you continue on your DM player relation. All right, there's my long-winded speech. Mr. Berry Boy, talk to me, Goose.
The question?
The question, what was the question? The question is, how do you deal with problem players, and what are some red flags for you? And it was posed by our lovely DM Chaos Feared, who can't be here tonight. Something more
Good
important.
question, Chaos Feared.
This
I unfortunately can't listen to this because he's actually maybe involved in some of that answer. But following up with what Fast Hands Sev has to say here, I think kind of following up with like having that criticism relationship, I think a really great way to build that, especially if you have a more experienced player playing in your group, is put them on your team. You know, that's a big thing. Like every time a session ends, I feel like I'm on Sev's team because afterwards he sends me a message and he says, "Hey, you're in my corner, right? You want me to succeed. I want to succeed. How did that session go for you? Well, what do you think I did good? What do you think I did bad?" Chaos Fear does the same thing. As soon as we're done, he comes to me. I'm his partner, right? Like we're on the same team, right? It's not me versus him. It's not my opinions versus his opinions. We're on the same team. So I think establishing that relationship is huge, and an easy way to do that is just saying, it's starting out with, "Hey, I want criticism," and then it also gives you the opportunity, if you do that with all your players, then if you have a problem with a player, you can hear from your other players, and you can hear is my problem with them founded? Are other players, is it interrupting the experience of the other players? Is it just bugging me? And then you can, deal more appropriately, right? Figuring out if it's just a personal issue that you might have with, the way that they go about things, or, if it's affecting every other player, then it's something you need to address, right? If it just bothers you for your own totally personal reasons that really have nothing to do with that person, then you can identify that. So get everybody on your team. That's how you deal with problem players, right? Is you all work together, right? You're all in this to make it a good experience. And then what were red flags? That was the other part. Yeah, I would agree with Sev. People that argue a lot during a session, that's hard. It puts the DM in a very awkward position. It can kind of slow down things for everybody. I think questioning the DM should look something like, "Hey, I feel like, based on these rules or based on this, that this situation should happen like this." And then at that point, if the DM agrees, cool. If not, and they present a good reason, move on. If the DM is just kind of being a jerk and just does whatever they want, then maybe that's not a DM you want to play for, but it should be a pretty short thing. Another red flag is players that go back on things and can't. Players that play D&D like a video game and they have to win. That is very, very big red flag. If you got to win D&D, you're playing the game wrong.
Oh no,
Yeah,
am
that's
I
it,
the
yeah.
only person that can't hear Sev?
I can't hear Sev either.
That's because I muted myself.
Got
Foresight touched on that earlier. I would definitely agree 100%. What's up, Tal? So nice of you to join us, sir. Damn it, now I'm going to have to go over prosody.
Yes.
That's all right. I'll have my other DMs do it first. Did you have anything else, Barry Boy?
No. Sorry, I'm trying to pull up the stream on my phone, but the commercial. No.
Yeah, apparently I'm getting some Ford money.
Apparently.
All right, awesome. So, hey, everyone in the chat, feel free to drop questions for us to go over. We will get to chat questions first. Aside from that, we are going to be rolling through our stream suggestion questions from our Discord. If you're not part of the Discord, go ahead and jump in that bad boy. I will. I'll drop the link right now. Maybe I'll drop the link right now.
Maybe.
Let me get the next question going before I do that.
I was just gonna say, you with technical issues.
Resting as a general concept and passive checks. Foresight, you posed this question.
Hi, I'm a Foresight.
You are a Foresight. So I think I'll get to you last on this one.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and start with Artificer. Artificer, resting as a general concept, and maybe we'll jump into passive checks next, but let's just do resting as a general concept. So Foresight, could you elaborate a little bit on what you're trying to get out of this question?
Um, so I think what I've noticed a lot. This is a 5e very specific question. This isn't like a lot of. We talk about a lot of general like TTRPG stuff here. Um, I understand. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Artificer. That the way D&D 5e is designed is supposed to be that you're having a couple combats per long rest. And what I've noticed in a lot of campaigns that I've both run and been in is that that tends not to happen. There tends to be, unless you're doing a dungeon, there tends to be one big combat that happens in the middle of the day. It's like combat or a dungeon or like castle or something. Um, and it can take some of the weight out of encounters where everyone's always got all their resources at like the beginning of every encounter, and also that resting, like players who have gone to 0 health maybe several times in the course of a combat, there's not a lot of downsides to that happening. And so I guess this kind of goes along with that as well, but resting is kind of like the cornerstone of that whole idea.
Right. So, okay. So it's kind of based on an old mechanic. So before, and it's kind of been carried on through, and it really definitely needs a rework. Whereas before, there were supposed to be between 4 and 5 combats a day or session. So that was based upon the whole resting issue. Now, yeah, most people have like a combat encounter, and then that's it. Okay. And the thing I talk about most for like DMs that have been playing for a little bit is they're like, I can't challenge my players. I gotta throw like huge monster encounters and like the CR is just massive, and and then shoot it down. I talked about a lot of them about resource drain. I was like, well, if you have a bunch of little encounters before you have the major encounter, and they don't, you don't allow them to rest in between, when they get to that big encounter, yeah, they're probably limited on things because, a lot of players don't measure that out. Now, most everybody that plays in my game has learned that system, so I got to change it up every now and then. But
Adapt,
um,
overcome.
yeah, they kind of see where like I'll throw like like a small encounter with them, okay, and they'll be like, oh, that's gonna be another small encounter with him, right? And then um, they'll be like, oh, okay, I see what he's doing, and then like a major encounter will come and they'll be like, aha, that's good. But then like the last session, I threw like another major encounter right after that one, and they were like, wait, what? It's not supposed to be doing this. Yes, I know. You learn, I learn. So yeah.
We are both growing.
Um, but yeah, that was the whole rest system. Now, a lot of things that people don't track either is you're only supposed to have one long 8-hour rest in a 24-hour time period, and most DMs don't track that either. So usually it's like a major encounter, they go for a little bit and then a long rest, and then they start their next session and go again, and then maybe like another major encounter, and then they do another long rest. But game time wise, usually maybe that's only like 16 hours difference. So that other long rest, you can't take it as rules is written.
Mm.
A lot of things that DMs don't track time. So
Yeah. One other thing I kind of want to this one I'm not 100% sure about. is kind of this idea of where like okay, so there's like a lot of dungeons that don't have a time requirement, and maybe for whatever reason you don't want them to have a time requirement or like a mechanic that makes people have to go through the dungeon quickly. You want to give them times to rest. Um, is there anything within the rules that prevents them from just staying there for multiple days and taking multiple long rests? Um, and on top of that, if there isn't, is there anything that you do?
Safety. Sorry, go ahead, Artificer.
No, no. There is not. I mean, the perfect example of that is if you do the Dungeon of the Mad Mage module. That is 26 levels of a dungeon. So long resting in a dungeon is a must. I mean, there's no possible way you're going to do 26 levels of that dungeon in a day. So it does. Now, some players sleeping in a dungeon is one thing because like I've said before, the for most DMs they don't think that way, but for me, my world is constantly moving. Like, no offense, the dungeon doesn't sleep just because you do, so that doesn't necessarily mean you'll get your long rest.
Yeah.
So my players tried the well, okay, we'll go in, beat the dungeon up, and then we'll run outside and go sleep. So that way we don't have to sleep in the dungeon. Well, guess what? My dungeon resets.
Mm.
You know, you know. It's not it's not a video game. You don't clear out one section and then come back and that section's cleared out again. No, no, no. There's a dungeon. There's creatures. There's stuff that lives there. I'm just saying.
DM, where's the save point?
The save tile, where to go? I'm sorry. But no, like a lot of the modules, like in the Mad Mage, there are sections in there that are actually built for having to take a long rest. So yeah, yeah, resting in the dungeon is a thing, and then that's the whole reason of why, back in the day, in second edition and that, taking watches was always a big thing, so you could break up party members, and that's why all those rules are in place for resting, where you must get at least, the thing that comes up is a lot for the elves 4-hour trance. Yeah, for your rest to not get your exhaustion point, you need your 4 hours of straight sleep. But in order to redo all your spells and that, you need the full 8 hours, 4 other hours of light activity. So, and no more than an hour of extenuous, you know,
Digging,
issue.
fortifying,
Yeah,
that kind of
so like like
shenanigans.
light reading, something like that. A lot of things that skips over with all that stuff. Like if your wizard is copying an elf wizard's copying his spells, guess what? They don't consider that light. That is
One
actually
one thing that I kind of worry about with interrupting long rests is that unless I have an active threat that the characters are aware of, it feels a lot like an unavoidable situation. Like they set aside this time to take a long rest, and through no fault of their own, they just can't. Now, obviously, that's different if they're like in a region where there's a lot of cultists and they know that they need to keep watch for cultists. But like, do you feel that interrupting long rests can feel punishing?
I
I guess it really depends upon the situation itself, to be honest.
yeah, you
Um,
don't want to wake them up at
I
home.
mean, if
Like,
yeah, I mean, if
you
they're
know,
like
like
exactly, uh, but yeah, so like it depends upon the environment where it is. In the middle of the dungeon, you should
Yeah,
fully
yeah.
expect it. If you're in the middle of the Choltian jungle, you should fully expect maybe some undead to wander upon you if you're out in the jungle.
or a raptor.
Now, right, yeah,
Sorry.
well, undead T-Rex, something like that. But yeah, um, it really depends upon the environment. Now, they're on a well-traveled road, and there's like an offsuit camping in between towns. I really don't expect it that much, unless it's something I already have pre-planned for like the session or whatnot. A lot of times at night, during a long rest, is when I will throw in RP sessions. As far as for inner character development, like I'll ask them, like most of my parties will take watch. So, you know, it'll be like, okay, who's taking what watch? Who's taking this? And then usually two characters like, oh, I'll watch with this, and then I'll ask the two, is there anything during your watch you guys wish to discuss? And a lot of party interaction happens at night. Bedtime stories. Yeah.
Yeah, gotta have your
Mm.
bedtime stories.
Great
All
opportunity.
right, so yeah, same question towards you, Barry boy. Were y'all? I'm sorry. Were you done there, Artificer? I apologize.
Oh yeah, I have talked long enough. Trust me. You just tell me to shut up, and I'll just move along.
All right, Barry boy.
How do I feel about the rest system? Well, as far as punishing players, I think you want to encourage your players to play strategically, and using rests is part of playing the game strategically, right? So there's an element of that. You don't want to punish your players for taking rests when they need to take rests. Now, if your players are going through encounters, but like they just kind of use their spell slots and they're pretty much fine, but they just want to rest all the time because like they're really trying to like metagame and always be at peak whatever, and it's just not working for your game, then you got to keep it moving, right? And so if that means they're in an active situation, right, interrupting that rest part of the game, right? Resting is an opportunity for you to decide, kind of what is the flavor going to be here, like I think the rest system in 5e does need to be, I think it serves a different purpose than like Sev redid the rest system for his Sev's Brew. And he can talk more on that because that's his thing. But I feel like it much more closely emulates the real rest requirements for real people, right? Especially having undergone, just being stabbed, right? Or like all the other things that happen in an encounter. So I think D&D 5e, the mechanic there is kind of more just like giving an opportunity to reset. Because realistically, if you got reduced to 0 HP and brought back, it's like you're probably going to be exhausted after that. You're probably going to need several days to recover from serious wounds. And so 5e could not really emulate that because that'd be so tough.
Punishing.
Yeah.
That would be so, and it would be almost worth like not getting involved in encounters.
Yeah.
Right. So
which
side note,
kind of more realistic to not get into it. Let's avoid fighting right now so we can survive.
Fair enough. That's probably, we don't have to kill everything we meet.
Sorry. Continue.
But yeah, I think the 5e rest system serves a very specific purpose, and it's giving the players a reset option. And I think something that Sev came up with, Sev's Brew rest system, which he will elaborate on, I suppose.
I'm gonna have to now.
A little more realistic. I mean, talk about it, man. I think it's a very cool rest system.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah. Did you have any questions for him, Foresight?
Not a question, just kind of to go along with the just my general concern about punishing players is you mentioned that if they're resting to always be optimal, and you describe that as metagaming, but I don't know if that is metagaming because I feel like if I existed in a world where I had magic spells and running out of them could cost my life, I would always make sure I have all my spells ready.
Sure, or I guess not metagaming, but like just slowing down the pace of.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
It just makes a less entertaining game for everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Takes yeah, I think I might concur. I think it's maybe a form of metagaming if you kind of know your DM's gonna cut you some slack or something. But yeah, I would agree. If you were in a world where you were fighting and needed spell slots and stuff like that, then definitely making sure that you were like prepared for battle is a big deal. I'll cite like the Dritz books that I read. A wizard in there, like they're gonna take time before they get into a conflict and in between conflicts to make sure they're fully prepared. But I think the issue comes in when players kind of don't note the trouble that they could be in. Like you're in a dungeon where there's lots of baddies, and you think it's okay to just rest here? Are you banking on either luck or the DM being kind to you? And I think as a DM, you can kind of intuitively, you should know your players well enough that you can kind of intuitively tell whether or not it's one or the other. Like I would probably never question my group of players for doing that. One, because my world's really brutal and it's not a bad idea. But two, because I know that I know that they're very, very committed role players, and they're not making it gamey, making it like a video game. They're going to be doing it because there are really good role play reasons and tactically smart reasons to do this at this time, not just because, hey, let's go to sleep and get freaking fully restored before we go fight this boss battle.
Yeah, if it doesn't line, like, okay, one of your party members is held hostage and like we need to get to the bottom of the dungeon to get them. It's like,
let's get an 8-hour
you gotta get to the bottom,
snoozing.
you know what I mean? Like, you're not gonna take a rest, like, because you're, but you're totally right. If you're in a situation where you guys are kind of more taking your time, and the character that you're playing, would be, will not take risks,
and
because that's the kind of character they are, then absolutely that's not metagaming.
And that's a great way to answer one of your problems there, Foresight. What he just said: have stakes, have serious stakes where they can't, where the time, like you're saying, like the time frame kind of thing. You're the DM. Decide, like, all right, yeah, you guys can rest. All those people you're trying to save are going to be sacrificed by these cultists now. Sorry, bummer.
It's so funny that you mentioned that, because that exact scenario happened in the current campaign I'm running, where there was a camp of cultists who was like literally ritual sacrificing people every night, and so every day that they spent resting was another day that like 5 people would die.
Better get on it. Maybe don't save up all your spell slots there.
And that's exactly what they did. They kind of the rested, not super half baked, but like definitely like 30, 70, 75% power.
as I feel it should be done, honestly.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. The like one of the campaigns I got there in a like a world-ending scenario with the Divine Gate being broken, and it used to be like, okay, guys, we only got like 5 days, and we got this, and so then when I updated the campaign guide, I switched it over 2 hours, so now it's like you guys only have like 63 hours left in this till whatever for the prophet, and they're like, why is this in hours? I'm like, gotta plan your stuff out now, and they're like, oh man, crap.
Gotcha.
Love it.
So sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, real quick. I've literally played games where like the actual in-world time is like 11 o'clock, right? Or it starts at 10 o'clock. And then I tell them, like, you look up the clock tower and you know that when that strikes midnight, like something is gonna whatever bad consequence is gonna happen. And so I've literally like, that's gonna happen in real time, guys. Like when we hit midnight, which is supposed to be the end of our session time anyway, like that's what's gonna happen, and everybody's looking at the clock and like, oh my god, like we gotta move. There's no time to discuss strategy. Like we gotta go. It makes for a very interesting game.
Some flavorful tension there.
I would not do it all the time though.
Yeah,
that's maybe too many.
And I think most of my question wasn't necessarily how do you disincentivize resting, because I think there's definitely mechanics for that, like what we've kind of gone over a little bit here. It was more, how do you not let resting invalidate what's happened before that?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Sure. Yeah.
So let me jump over this. The Sev's Brew resting system. So I broke it down a little differently, where there's no short rests or long rests. You've got a breather, which is like 10 minutes to an hour, whatever, to catch minimum 10 minutes to catch your breath, and you can use healing items and half your hit die. And then you've got a rest, which is 6 hours of sleeping, and it'll restore half your hit die, all your spell slots, all your class features. You round down on all of that. And then the exhaustion mechanic there is you can expend your hit die for healing, and you can expend any previously unused hit die to recover 1 stack of exhaustion. Maximum 1 stack per rest. Complete a rest every 24 hours or gain a stack of exhaustion. And if a rest is interrupted, you can choose to either suffer a stack of exhaustion or lose the other benefits of a rest. Then I've got a recovery period, which is a prolonged rest in a safe location that's at least 24 hours long. That's going to remove all stacks of exhaustion, fully heal you, fully replenish your hit die, all that good stuff. I developed this because, well, I just was highly dissatisfied with the rest system in D&D, but also I wanted it to be meaningful and I wanted it to make sense. And at first it was like, well, I want it to be kind of punishing, but that's not really the case. I just want it to make some sense. And, if you're out on the road and you're freaking adventuring and you're delving into dungeons, catching a night's sleep is not going to fully recover you. That's not going to make you feel 100%. There should still be some kind of penalty. There should still be like you can get mostly back to normal. You can be mostly good. And especially, I run a different exhaustion system, so I give out exhaustion a lot more. Being able to like give the players more options there, like you can use your hit die for healing, or you can use it to get rid of an exhaustion stack that you've gained. And also making it so that a long rest doesn't just like screw them, or a rest doesn't just screw them out of all of their healing and their spell slots and their class features. Well, it's cool. It gets interrupted. You can choose to get all of those features, but you're going to take a point of exhaustion. Or maybe you haven't used too much. So, you don't need to. Bam, take the point of exhaustion instead. You kind of get your option. And that's what players really want, is options, that player agency. So you can interject that in a way. That's a homebrew one, to each their own. It really works for me. I like it a lot. But
I definitely like your system a lot. The thing I liked about it when I was reading it was how you handled hit dice, and you didn't have anything that the way you fully heal yourself is with the 2 weeks or whatever of rest, which is basically not only out of combat but out of out of mission, I would say.
Yeah. I changed it to 24 hours too, by the way, to make it a little more palatable.
I honestly am fine with like the week thing that you did. Either way. But I like how you handle hit dice and how you use that as your metric for resting in a forest or resting in a dungeon, essentially. I've tried to do similar things. I also even before we've talked, I do use exhaustion a lot more than as is written in the rules. And I think I think that's a very good way to fix a lot of the problems, is exhaustion, possibly even some other, maybe some, I don't know, maybe an injury mechanic of some kind.
An injury mechanic, you say? Sorry. Homebrew.
Yes, I understand you're trying to say. And I think homebrew is a very good solution for a lot of these problems, and because it's, as we've kind of said, 5e is not really well equipped to solve them super well. It's a lot of it comes down to the dungeon master being good at building tension. But I think definitely homebrew is definitely going to be necessary, and it's going to be campaign to campaign, because there's going to be some campaigns where like your system could work very well, and there's going to be other ones where it just doesn't flesh out.
100% agree. Yeah.
And so like Dungeons of the Mad Mage is a perfect example. You're never really going to be in a city in that one, so like you can't ever take a long rest at that point.
My rest system would make Dungeon of the Mad Mage a freaking brutal time, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Which personally, I think myself, I'd enjoy that, but I don't
Oh,
know. If
I'm
that's
sure you would.
I don't know if that's for everybody. We seem to have lost Artificer. I shot him a message. I don't know if like his power went out or something happened. Rope
Hopefully he's
trick.
okay and he'll come back. Rope trick is good.
What's rope trick?
Well, it's a spell.
Oh, elaborate.
It creates a pocket space where you can rest. Basically, you and your party can rest.
Oh.
Damn
wizards.
You damn wizards every freaking time. God damn it. What was I about to say?
Sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah, I think definitely one problem I have with exhaustion as written is that the first level of exhaustion makes you have to take skill checks
horrible.
at disadvantage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's so brutal.
And as a DM who is really like, I love
Skill
making
check
skill
heavy.
checks.
Yeah.
I am such a skill heavy check GM. I absolutely hate that exhaustion's first level is
Have
a disadvantage on all skill checks. Like it's ridiculous to
Have you
me.
seen my reworked exhaustion table?
I have. I've
The
yeah.
-1 to all rolls and -5 feet per of movement per level.
Oh, I don't think I've seen that. Maybe I haven't seen it since you've changed since
Yeah,
you've
I
had. I
upped it.
remember on your. I think I remember on your the
It
one you
was
showed
brutal
me.
as fuck. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on the one you showed me, it was I think you changed the skill checks one to second level exhaustion, which I think by itself is just a huge market
Yeah,
improvement.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I've got it to where each level you take -1 to all your rolls and -5 feet movement per level. And then second level, you don't get a reaction. Third level, you only get 1 action or bonus action. Fourth level, you cannot concentrate. Maximum HP is reduced by half. Fifth level, you can only make 1 attack. Advantage on attacks against you. Sixth level, unconscious, roll death saves. And for each one of those levels, you'd get -1 to rolls and -5 feet per movement. You know, and
Yeah.
so I think I personally think that's a way more balanced and way more
Yeah.
intuitive rest system, and it pairs up well with my exhaustion system, and it pairs up well with my rest system, being able to expend hit die to get rid of exhaustion, being able to take your recovery to get rid of all of it. It gives the
Yeah.
players some more options. Also, you have to roll a con 15 and fail that before you get the exhaustion. So I just made it
Yeah.
way more palatable, in my opinion.
No, for sure. One thing that I would, I wouldn't, I think this change would require either a fundamental change to some of the mechanics in 5e, or just a very thorough examining of the rules. But one thing I want to figure out how to play with more is the class resources not recovering as quickly. The only problem with that is that spells really mess it up. Because like ninth level spellcasters get so many spells, but it's also like the main part of their character, and there's not really a way to jive that with how other classes work unless you went through every single class and figured out what exhaustion meant for every single class, which in theory you could do, but then there's like the problems of like multi-classing, and it just gets like
Yeah.
onerously
And
complex.
I think that's where you have to like take a step back and be like, okay, a warrior, a fighter, someone who's physically conditioned, someone who's a beast, that works out fucking 2 hours a day, and has like good stamina versus the bookish wizard who sits behind his desk all day writing. They're gonna have vastly different levels of stamina, and they're gonna handle exhaustion way differently. And
Yeah.
that really becomes, specific. And so you kind of just have to look at like people overall as a whole. Let's assume that the bookish wizard can at least go hiking all day. You got to do a
Well,
few things like that.
even if you don't count hiking, like for example, if you asked like if you asked the person with the low intelligence to study in a library all day, theoretically that should cause exhaustion, but there's no mechanics for that. So is it really fair to like have only the physical things cause exhaustion, and which then disproportionately affects the spellcasters when there's probably things that would exhaust
Mentally and
like people?
emotionally. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So like the system
That's why
isn't
you
really
gotta
designed for any of
that's
that
why you gotta
nuance.
just do a coverall, honestly, right?
I'm
And
gonna
That's
go
exact,
out
and
on a
that's
limb here and say
and
we're getting into a territory of like editing for editing's sake,
yeah, we should
just
probably
no,
dial
no,
it
for
back.
complicating
You're
for
right.
complicating's sake,
and
which I think is your point, right? Like
yeah,
if you
that's
actually
exactly my
tried to
point.
do this, it would just get out of hand, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like
It's a rabbit hole that has no end.
yeah, and so there's a certain point where you have to balance out like the game and player experience, and then like really trying to emulate, and
Some level of
consequences and all
realism.
that,
Yeah,
right? So you always have to ride that balance.
yeah, for sure.
Um,
It's a very
but
fine balance, and it's going to be campaign specific and even like group specific. Like you could run the same campaign for two different groups, and you would need possibly a different system for each group, and
yeah, experience
that's
play really different. But yeah, I think that is the upside of the 5e current rest system. Is like it's really basic.
yes.
It's really understandable, intuitive, and it's like people can use it. like, okay, I get it. I need to stay for 8 hours. Like, I
Yeah.
can do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's honestly the hallmark of 5e in general. I think 5e is
Mhm.
really good as a base system. It's got a lot of like content just within itself that functions very good as just a good system. But I think its greatest strength is the fact that things can be added on to it so easily. I don't think there's another system that so easily allows things to be created and added onto it that I've ever played. Other
Yeah,
than
it's
like
so
obviously,
accessible.
other than obviously like GURP, but we're not counting GURP. That's not a real system.
I don't know what GURP is.
Generic. It's a generic role playing system. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know what. Yeah. Generic universal role playing system. I almost had the whole thing.
Gotcha.
It's a very basic system that you. It's basic as hell. It's not a real system.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, that's the beauty of 5e too, is that like, hey, I can plug my rest system into it and it doesn't really fuck up the game, you know?
hmm
He's back. His power went out. I'm so glad you're back.
Dear Lord. I
Yeah.
was like, phew, everything I was like, what the hell?
That's
And
no fun.
yeah. And I will say part of my reason for submitting is I've had solutions. I was just curious what everyone thought about resting and also passive checks, which
absolutely.
we haven't even gotten into.
Uh,
Yeah,
Um,
it was a good topic.
I'd
yeah.
agree. I'd agree. All right, yeah. So let's move on to passive checks. So I don't like them.
Now
I think
here's my initial question.
Hold on.
And there's three answers. Do you not like the player's passive checks? Do you not like NPC's passive checks? Or do you not like both?
Well, now hold on. Here's the thing: is I would rather roll on it. I see the value of a passive check, and I tried to do a secret roll thing, which we're actually going to need to do new secret rolls for this one. But I found myself not even using that as often. I think passive checks are a story tool. I think passive checks are something that is kind of, you can just remove it and have it be DM's discretion on whether or not you think that that player needs to know about it, or you can just roll something.
Well, again, that's on the player side, but there's also the NPC side.
I mean, I
So,
think that that holds true for the NPC side too. You're
well,
the DM,
I
right?
would see no, but I would disagree. So what I'm about what I would like say, let's say for example, you have a castle with 20 guards that the rogue needs to slip past. It's not really fair on the player to expect them to succeed against 20 rolls,
Well, and
right? And
also, are they actively searching for him?
exactly my point.
That's when I'd
And
have the roll
so
come into place.
no, but that's what I'm saying is that in that environment, the rogue making a check against the passive perception of different levels of guard makes more sense. And then if they're noticed, instead of having them be, oh, you were spotted, then they make an active check to see the final player. That's the system that I use a lot, which is that there's a passive check in play until the check fails, then the player gets one like round to try to save themselves or they're spotted. And that's when they're rolling against the guard's active perception, which is a roll.
Yeah, no, in that circumstance, I could definitely see the value there. I would kind of play it where, yeah, you're going against their perception. I mean, that's why passive checks were created, right?
Yeah.
I guess, I was more saying I don't like them as in like using the player's passive perception, but that makes
Yes,
sense.
yes,
That
yes,
makes
yes, yes.
sense.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
gonna.
why I did the initial question of do you not like players, NPCs, or both? That's
Yeah,
what
that's
because there
fair.
is a difference. Yeah.
That's fair. I also find that I don't use NPCs passives very often. If I and I guess it gives you a good benchmark, but like I usually just kind of go off of my own discretion and what makes sense and how stealthy the player is. And if I feel like the NPC would have noticed, I usually just do a roll to see, and go from there. But that's just my system. You want to
Yeah.
say something there, Barry Boy?
Yeah, I want to preface this by saying I don't often use passive checks, but I think they're interesting and I think they definitely have their place. and they're useful to use. You can think of it like a strength check, right? Like you have to do a strength check to open a door, and you have a certain DC you have to beat. If you're trying to sneak by somebody, like there's just a DC you have to beat, right? And that's
Yeah.
just all it is that's the number for them, right?
Yeah.
Now on the player end, I think the reason why a lot of DMs don't like it is because it doesn't even give the player a chance to roll a dice to see
Yeah.
if they see something. But if you're not paying, if you're not actively searching for something and somebody's trying to like sneak up on you,
Mm-hmm.
right? You don't really have a chance in real life to do an investigation if you don't even know that somebody's sneaking up on you,
Yeah.
Also true. Yeah.
right? So it's like it is it is D&D's attempt to simulate kind of like that we would, hear somebody crunching on sticks, right? Like that we would hear certain things just passively, right? But that we aren't necessarily always looking for stuff, and you don't always necessarily get a choice whether you see something or not.
Yeah.
Sometimes somebody just sneaks by you.
And so
uh,
to combat that, I came up with that. Well, I didn't come up with it. I pilfered it from, gosh, I don't even know where, but I think it was Cyberpunk
Dungeon Coach or
2020.
something.
This one wasn't Dungeon Coach. It was Cyberpunk 2020's system where basically I had everyone do 10 rolls, right? And then I took their 10 rolls and I put them on a little spreadsheet and I had them numbered 1 through 10. And then whenever I needed to do a check that was, necessarily a passive where they wouldn't notice, I would roll a D10 and I would pick their number off of that chart. It's a little convoluted and maybe a little like roundabout to do it, but yeah, and I'll even say that I haven't used it as efficiently as I have. I should probably use passive checks more often. I usually just blow it off for like my discretion, honestly.
Yeah. I feel that. I do that too.
It's a great way to like surprise your players,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you ask them to roll a check, hey, roll a perception check, and they don't roll well,
They're going to be searching for something or know something's
they're
coming.
like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. You definitely don't want to. You definitely don't want to alert your players.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I get the purpose, and I'm in the same boat as you guys, where I don't use them.
I do like
Not
secret
nearly
checks
as much as I should, because they're very good narrative tools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes they seem unfair.
Yeah. I do like secret roles as a concept. I feel like I don't know if I'd I feel like I'd have a hard time using them. I don't know. They're
That's-
weirdly unintuitive for me.
That's what happened with me is I kept coming to moments where I was like, oh, I should have him secret roll on that. And then I was just like, well, but does that even make sense? I could just do this and it'll still lend to the story and they'll still have a good time and they'll get more agency. That's where it always came down to. What about you? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, there was one thing I tried for I didn't try. I wanted to try and I presented it to my players and they didn't want to try it. So I never actually got to try the system. But one thing I thought of was a system where you roll you would break a day down into morning, afternoon, and night. And you'd have them roll 3 perception checks for that. And you would let them assign where they wanted them at the beginning of each day. And so in that way they could kind of decide where their where their character was more alert and where their character was less alert. They didn't really like that, but it was just one of my many ideas I've thrown at players throughout the years.
Yeah.
I like to throw like new concepts at players. Say, what do you guys think of this? And they're like, nope. And I'm like, okay, and I just move on.
And here's me admitting that I'm not a great DM. How do you even calculate passive perception? I know on D&D Beyond it just says your passive perception, but like, how would you calculate that?
I believe it's 10 plus modifiers.
It's just 10. It's just 10. It's just 10 plus modifiers. Yeah, right.
It is well, all
Isn't it
passive.
8
I mean,
plus proficiency plus modifier then?
No, it is 10 plus your modifier, so your perception score.
Okay, heard.
Or insight or investigation, because there are the best of those as well.
Right. Well, technically, every skill has a passive of 10 plus whatever your modifier.
Yes. Also
that makes sense.
Oh,
So yeah,
I didn't
what?
know that every skill had that.
Another system, and this is more pertaining to passive insight, not perception, because another problem I don't like is that when you're doing a charisma encounter, as I think of it, you don't want kind of similar to the perception problem. You don't want them to suddenly be rolling insight in the middle of a conversation, because that's gonna alert them like something's up. You know what I mean? The player has made the insight check at that point, not even the character.
That's where the secret roles really came in handy for me. That's when I was using them, was
Yes.
in social scenarios.
One thing that I thought of, and this one I've never presented to players, but I've thought of a couple times, is rolling a check at the beginning of like a charisma encounter, and possibly also rolling all the other charisma encounters, and doing something like for every 5 points you get to ask one question to me, the GM, and I will answer it to the best of my abilities.
Huh. That's fascinating. That's
Um,
like a way to like shore up someone playing an intelligent character too. Like me playing a wizard with 18 intelligence. Yo, your boy Sev does not have 18 intelligence on his personal character sheet, okay?
Yeah.
So like and I'm sorry, I don't I'll go off on this tangent in a minute. Finish up. I
No,
apologize.
that was most of my thought. The main reason I haven't tried to implement it, one, it's a kind of a whole separate rule system on top of them, and I think I would only ever present it to my players if I knew they were doing a very intrigue heavy campaign. Um, which I have done, but I hadn't thought of this until after that campaign. And the kind of other problem with it is that it's just a little clunky. I feel like I need to figure out a way to refine it down to its essence, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. Yeah, no, I think you make some good points there for sure.
Yeah.
I think there's also an element there of you
I'm gonna use
maybe
the
want
restroom,
to
but I'll still
encourage
be
your
listening.
players to ask for insight checks themselves. You know?
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. That I've done that before, where I've said, I'm not gonna be asking for a lot of insight checks in this campaign. You got to prompt them yourself. So
Yeah.
I've definitely done that.
Yeah. You can also ask them to make like a perception check, and then like, okay, you smell sweat, or like you see a bead of sweat run down
Yeah,
their forehead, or
absolutely.
like, you know, and kind of maybe encourage it in that way, where hopefully it kind of comes from them being curious. But also, if they don't want to make that, you know, if they just trust that NPC, like,
Yeah, why would they
man,
question it?
that's their due diligence, you know?
Yeah. What about you, Artificer? How do you handle passives?
Handle passives the way you're supposed to handle passives.
By the goddamn rules.
You know what?
No.
Well said, sir.
Well, I mean, it's passive, okay? I mean, just like in real life, you know, if somebody takes like the observant feat, you know, that adds +5 to your automatic passive score as far as for perception wise. And, you know, knowing a lot of observant people, I mean, yeah, you do new stuff passively, but that's and I state that quite a bit. It's passive, okay? Yeah, when you're traveling, talking with friends, passive perception score, maybe you do know, like, you know, something's a little bit off in the forest and that. And I kind of role play with that. But if I actively ask you for a perception check, there's a reason for it. Something that your passive is not going to pick up, but maybe, you know, that check that I'm asking for, you know, and it really worries players when I ask for a perception check. And it's like my passive of 24, I was like, if your passive would have picked it up, I would have told you about it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you have them roll when the passive doesn't pick it up?
Right. So
does that kind of invalidate the passive, or it just gives them a chance?
Well, a lot of times it depends upon the actual passive score that they have will determine whether or not they actually get to make a check.
The other kind of problem the one kind of problem I have with allowing them both a passive and an active check is that it basically means that they're actually getting an active check, but that they can never roll lower than their passive.
No, that is not true. So if I ask you for an active passive check and you roll lower than your passive, that's okay. You didn't notice nothing.
But if their passive check would have picked it up anyway, then they wouldn't need the active check. That's what I'm saying.
But I kind of work that differently. I mean, because you can be observant and notice things, but there's always somebody that can sneak up behind you and scare the whole living crap out of you. Just for an example. I mean, I'm a pretty observant person, and it's not really hard to sneak up on me, but it does happen. Everybody has an off day.
What I mean, for example, is like, let's say their passive check was 14 and the stealth check of the NPC was 13. Do they see that?
No, and it's not obvious. Like you're walking across a cornfield or something like that. But I would note to the player that they heard something, but they're not quite sure of what direction maybe that.
So their passive senses basically key them up to something is wrong, but not like, oh shit, there's a guy right there. It's more like, oh
yeah,
the hair.
Oh, and then you can roll to see if there's a guy right there.
Yeah.
That makes a little more sense.
The hair on the back of my neck. The hair on the back of my neck just stood up. That kind of shit.
Exactly. You get that little tingling feeling, like, what the hell is going on?
Danger sense.
Got it. Okay, that makes more sense.
I just became a better DM right now with this talk. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you.
Isn't that why we're here?
That is absolutely
passive perceptions.
Yeah.
Artem, sir, he does it.
Let's
I think we've also proven that I come up with the best questions.
All right, we're moving on now. Definitely engaging questions for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then probably next room we can dive into that whole rabbit hole of how long does your stealth check last versus a perception check kind of.
Oh God.
Let's for the sake of brevity keep it moving. So I'm gonna be selfish right now and dive into something that I want to talk about, and it's more just like a brief commentary on like helping players really be their characters as a DM. And then I want to get into probably our last question for the night if no viewers post anything. So yeah, helping a player feel as smart, strong, wise, charismatic, whatever it is as their character. That's a tricky one. And I see you have your hand raised. 1 second.
Okay.
One thing that I thought of was for like a tactician, for like wisdom or intelligence, having that player do a check when they come to a combat, a social encounter, an investigation scene, something like that. Having their character do a check, and then you as the DM feeding them, based on their check, feeding them some things about this area that may be of use to them. Now, I'm not like saying like, okay, just like a standard investigation check. I'm more saying like, okay, you've got a really, really intelligent mage or whatever for this purpose, who comes to maybe a bandit camp, right? And like you as the DM set up this whole thing so you can see 15 different ways that the players could exploit things. They roll a high intelligence check for you, and you give them 2 or 3 of those. What up, Glowpaint? You give them 2 or 3 of those, or a really wise character, and they're at a combat, scenario, and you have them roll. Give me a wisdom check really quick. They roll really high. Maybe you give them some clues about, the battle formation or the kinds of weapons these guys are using, or maybe who the like big bad is in the area that might break their morale. It's something that I want to start doing in Eltagrad, and I haven't done too much of yet, but that's also because my players are usually pretty clever, but I also might argue that sometimes they're not. So I definitely should jump on that. What about you guys? What are some things you do to help your players more embody their character? And yes, you had your hand raised, so you may go first.
Thank you, thank you. I have learned from school very well. Um, so first I have a kind of a comment on this to make the problem even worse.
Don't
I'm
do
gonna
that.
do it.
Next
I'm sorry.
question.
All right,
Oh,
we're gonna
stop.
skip you and go to.
Hey, I had my hand raised. I have my time. So there's this weird concept in D&D where it's and really role-playing games in general, where um it's very easy to fantasize and become stronger. It's not a whole lot as easy to fantasize and become either smarter or better at talking to people. Because those are things that the players kind of actively have to do. You touched on it a little bit, where allowing them checks to gain ideas is definitely a part of it. That can help with the intelligence part. But especially with charisma, persuasion as a check is a really weird thing. Um, if you know people are good role players, what you can do is you can have them roll first and role play based on their check, which is what I try to do a lot of the time. Is players will present me with, this is what I plan to persuade the person to do, and I'm like, roll persuasion check, and I'm like, okay, what do you, and then they see like, oh, they got a 7. I'm like, okay, what do you say? Stuff like that. That works a little bit, and people can understand like queuing on that. They can understand, oh, I rolled bad. I'm going to fail on this check. I need to role play failing. um the but not everyone's good at doing that, and so how do you, like, it's kind of not great from a story perspective to be like, oh, you got a nat 20 on your persuasion check, you can convince the person of the thing you want to do. I'm not even talking like breaking the game. I'm like, you convince the person of the reasonable thing they want to do. I understand you're not a very talkative person in real life and you can't find the words to say it, so we're gonna like describe it a little bit.
Yeah, kind of feed them a bit.
But it's not at the same, if that makes sense. It's a I'm not, again, I don't have a good solution to this. I'm just presenting another problem.
Thanks.
I'm a,
Thanks for that, bud.
I'm a horrible person. Now for solutions, and so one thing that I do, which I think is pivotal, and I don't know if it's the most important, but it's definitely like a pillar of how I give people that power fantasy, is that I make sure that their mistakes, um like their failures, like their bad rolls, also feed into the narrative of their character. So for example,
Yeah.
a barbarian making an attack roll and missing is not going to build upon their power fantasy of a strong, muscly dude who wields a big axe. What will do is that you swing really hard with your axe, so much so that you lose your center of balance for a moment. You slam your axe into the ground, causing a crest into the ground to go to, like, cause rubble to fly, but you miss your target. That feeds into the power fantasy a lot, and I think that's what's missed a lot, is that DMs will be like, you failed the check, therefore you did badly, where it should be, you failed the check because your character failed the check, if that makes sense. And so trying to find as many moments as possible as a GM to describe things as either your character failed forward, so maybe they failed but there's a way to recover, or you failed because of the fantasy of your character, I think are very important.
I will note that in Eltigrad, in our prologue, at the end of the prologue, each of the players had to take 2 inept skills with which they will always roll a disadvantage based on kind of what they did or didn't do during the prologue and what they screwed up on. Barry Boy's awkward as fuck, bud.
There was like several situations where I was role playing my character, and like they were very awkward conversations in the role play, and then so at the end we just decided like this is his flaw. Like,
and not just that, they were half of them were awkward because of poor rolls.
yeah.
So I think it fit in. What do you think there, Mr. Barry Boy?
I actually liked a lot of what Artificer said. I think rolling first and then
Artificer or Foresight?
I'm sorry, Foresight. Roll first and then role play with what you rolled. I think that's way more, because a lot of times people will role play and make a very convincing argument to an NPC for why they should do something, right? And as the DM, you're like, wow, that's a really good reason. and then you roll and it's a bad roll, and then the NPC just kind of has to be a jerk, and it's just
Yeah.
like, well, no, like I'm not going to do what you want. You're not going to persuade
Yeah.
me, and then leaves. Even though you might have actually given a very persuasive statement. So,
Yeah.
if you roll bad, come up with a bad reason. What I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I will also kind of on top of that, I will sometimes make it so that there isn't actually a failure especially for persuasion checks. There isn't actually a failure threshold. It's that the lower you roll, the harder you have to convince this character.
Yeah, the better your argument needs to be.
The better your argument needs to be to succeed. The more obstacles I will put in your way in this charisma encounter.
Yeah. So I think what I can add to this, because I feel like Foresight covered a lot, give your players plenty of opportunities to be their characters. And that doesn't have to be roles. Like it can just be the little things, as Artificer brought up, like nighttime watches. Like just these little things. Just sprinkle those in all the time. A lot of DMs are, like going to be encounter, puzzle, interaction in which you have to convince somebody to do something, puzzle, and it's like there's all these great little places where you can do flavor interaction that really help people get into their character and figure out what the character's like, because you're kind of developing it as you play. I think the other thing, and it's something that Steve and I have worked on, or Sev, sorry.
Whatever, no worries. People know.
Something that we've worked on is also being true to the real world. It's characters have to be true to themselves, and the real world has to be true to itself. And so, sometimes you can't convince somebody of something. And it, like, the great example is they're a guard for the king, and you want to see the king, and it's like, no way in hell is there anything you could ever say that's going to let them go through, like, ever. And then so that gives them the feeling that they're in a real world as well. They're not in a world they can just do whatever. Right. So that adds a lot to bringing them into their character when they feel that they're in a real world as well.
Yeah.
And if that guard does let that player through, that dude's getting executed. Jammy, if you're watching. Artificer, sorry, Foresight, if I may, just really quick one.
No, go ahead.
Artificer, I'll circle back to you, buddy. Don't worry. Artificer, if I could get your opinion on here, helping a player feel more like the character. What kind of things do you do? Did we lose Artificer?
Probably.
Artificer.
You might have muted.
Artificer. All right, go ahead. Foresight.
He's busy creating artifacts. Oh God, what was I gonna say?
Cheesy.
Hey, I play Magic the Gathering. What can I say? I have my favorite artificer within arm's reach of me at all times.
His power went out again. Oh no.
Dang, poor guy.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like a storm over there.
So in my endless need to create systems within systems, I would very much love a dedicated charisma encounter system for D&D. It's not something that I think is very well fleshed out. There is this thing from Pathfinder called Ultimate Intrigue, which I own, that gets pretty damn close and does a pretty decent job of this, where it breaks down, it makes it so that a charisma encounter is not just persuasion or deception versus insight. It's a series of multiple checks along with role playing, sometimes with conditions. I know there's in that book there's some feats that if you succeed on a persuasion check, you can, like, for example, cause someone to be exhausted as a result of your conversation, or unable to cast spells on you for that. And there's I just would love a dedicated, like, charisma system for D&D 5e. That's just one more thing I'd like to add on top of it.
That's fair. It's fair.
Which I understand it's a combat system first and foremost. Like, again, I'm wishing for the stars here, but
Yeah, well, that's when you just gotta, if you want it done right, do it yourself. Boop posts something interesting that I think we should dive into. Having actual riddles and puzzles that the player has to figure out is what I have planned to help the players connect with their characters and bring them into the game more. I think that could potentially be a double-edged sword, because a lot of time those puzzles and riddles, the player is the one who is going to be challenged. And I think it could definitely go both ways, but I feel like it almost, depending on how it's presented and who the player is, could bring them out of it to where they're thinking with their regular above table brain, trying to figure out the DM's motive and what the DM wants out of this. But if they are committed, dedicated players like mine are, and just this Sunday we had a pretty funny little puzzle, it can definitely bring them into it, especially if you put some high stakes in there. Go ahead, Foresight. I see your hand raised. You gotta
Yes.
get on this hand raising, Barry boy.
It's working. For riddles and puzzles, a solution that I have come upon recently to make them less of a double-edged sword and less of something that will, like, for example, stump people, is two things. Number one, having it so that there is a way to brute force your way through the riddle or puzzle. If your puzzle or riddle cannot be solved except by the answer, it will open the chance for frustration that they cannot solve.
Yeah. Have multiple answers for sure. I would agree.
Not even just multiple answers, just like have it so that the puzzle can be literally broken.
I mean, that's an answer though, isn't it?
It is an answer. Yeah. Like I have in the campaign I'm currently running, every single dungeon that exists is basically created by a god. Spoilers if you're in my campaign, but I don't think any of my players listen to this.
Yeah, well, why not? Get them in here. No, I'm just kidding.
And this god, the way he creates stuff is with clockwork. It's all like clockwork mechanical stuff, and often when like rooms are shifting or stuff like that, they can see the clockwork. They can see the things moving, essentially. And there's been multiple times where my players are like, "I shoot the clockwork," and it's worked sometimes. Other times it hasn't. It's one of those things that they can almost always brute force their way through any of my riddles that way. There's also within the riddles themselves, there's a way to brute force it. Like a bunch of my riddles you can solve with fly. And that really helps a lot.
It's a lot of things that could be solved with fly, to be honest.
There's a lot of things that can solve with fly. They didn't have fly for a while, now they have fly, so now a lot of my puzzles can be solved with that. And then they encountered the wind puzzles, which could not be solved with fly, funny enough, so I didn't plan for that, but whatever. And then the second part of it is that in that same world, I have an adventuring guild, and they go out and basically map these dungeons that exist throughout the world created by this god, and not only review, they actually review the dungeons like a Yelp, like a whole in universe Yelp system.
All right.
And what's a big source of their income is they go into these dungeons, solve them, and then throughout the dungeons will put either solutions or ways that the players can receive help from the guild through magical it's usually like a magical handprint on the wall that they can put their hand on. It costs them money to use. And so
there you go.
So any riddle has like a really strong hint that basically solves the riddle, but it costs money every time to use. And so they will never run into a riddle that they cannot solve because the answer just costs money.
That's fair. That's fair.
Now that's a little bit of a blunt solution, but I think there's a much more like intuitive way to do it, where I think that you can have it so that the players can roll an insight check and receive hints. So I would say if you definitely have a puzzle or something like that, you should have several hints ready to dish out.
I would agree. All right, so we're getting a little short on time here. I want to wrap this up in about 10 or 15 minutes, and we are going to jump into our last question, which is a big one. It was posed by a lovely being that goes by human in our chat or in our Discord server. And oh boy, I almost want to save this for the first question in the next
Yeah, that's a whole thing.
in the next stream, but it's DMing. How do I do it? What are the essentials I need to know? What is the best cheat sheet for my first silly session? How do I determine what checks to perform and when? Any tips on deciphering spells, actions, or abilities I don't understand? Human, if you're watching right now, I want you to know that we're going to actually dive into this on the next stream next Tuesday, and we will do a really in-depth dive. In fact, the title of the next DM discussion is going to be DMing. How do I do it? And I think that we're probably going to wrap up for tonight. Did you have anything else you wanted to
yeah.
say, Mr. Barry?
I wanted to add one thing.
Please do.
about the
Please do.
comment made about puzzles and getting your characters.
Please
involved.
do, sir.
I think there's a huge opportunity there to, if you take puzzles off of D&D forums or wherever you pick up puzzles from, which, don't get me wrong, are great resources because it's so easy to make a puzzle too hard for your players.
DM's
So
Guild.
easy. Yeah. So pick up a puzzle from there if you want. But if you can somehow link that to a character and an experience that a character has had, that is going to just bring them in, and they're going to say, my character has knowledge that, about the world. So it's not just a straight intelligence puzzle, right? It's like it plays on the character's background. Maybe they are elven, right? They're the elven race, and like there is something scribbled underneath something like in elven, and like only their character can read that, and that's going to make them feel really into it. So there's a great opportunity there, and I just wanted to hit that really quick because a lot of people don't do that.
Yeah,
a lot of people just put in a generic puzzle.
That's clever. That's really clever. I like that. I like that. All right, guys, that's gonna be it for tonight. I want to give a big thank you to Foresight and Barry Boy for joining. I would shout out Artificer too. In fact, I will shout out Artificer. Thank you. He had some power outages, 2 power outages that happened at his place tonight. So that's unfortunate that we didn't get to get his take on it. Next week, Tuesday DM discussion, DMing. How do I do it? All right, guys.
What time are we doing these?
I am going to be starting them at 9:30. So that's 10:30 your time, I believe.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you for having me on, man.
Dude, absolute pleasure. Both of you. Thank you so much. Boop, much love. I'm looking forward to it too. Everyone have a great night. Fast Sands out.
Peace.